Hey everybody, how are you? I'm welcome to the Snap No Tap podcast. Of course, I'm Tony Cecchine with Joe Cardinal, and I guess I might as well introduce today's special guest. Many of you know who he is. I call him Special K because he's a special guy, not only in the gym but outside of the gym. I miss him since he left Chicago for greener pastures, and he is one of the stars of the Snap No Tap video series, so it's fitting to have him here. The legendary Kosta Special K Korres. Welcome, Kosta.
Thanks, Tony. I miss you guys so much. You have no idea. I really miss training at the old gym too, and with Kevin and all the old crew. But it's great to be here again, seeing you on video at least.
Yeah, it's great to see you. You look great. We'll get into what you've been doing because you kind of shared a little bit about it, but before we started filming, but I'll let you discuss all of that. But before we go into this, I always like to give a shout out when it's important. And the other day, about a week ago, I lost a good friend, and he's also my auto mechanic. And believe it or not, on the corner of my street. And I went to the wake on Friday. Steve Salvato, 52 years old, and just he healed over from an aneurysm, which I had one of those, and luckily I survived, but he did not. It's a shock. Everybody's in shock, and it's just terrible, and his partner came over, his business partner John came over to my house Friday, and told me I heard a hot rod, and I look out the window and I see John's hot rod, and I come out, and he comes up on my stoop, and he's like in tears. I'm like, uh-oh. And it was a shame. And basically what had happened was Steve was complaining of a headache, and he told him, you got to get to the hospital. And I guess they both went together to the emergency room over here. And while he was waiting to be seen, he had a seizure. And when he seized, and I went through all of this stuff. So when he had this seizure, he fell, hit his head, and that burst that aneurysm. So they had a life flight him to another hospital where they had a surgeon that could deal with this. And apparently he went through the surgery, but he came out of it brain dead, never regained consciousness, and that was the end of it. And it's just tragic, he had a great life, great guy. I never seen this guy get mad at anything, especially when I show up with bad news about my car. He never got mad. My cars tend to be, he was working on my one hot rod that I had to end up selling, the Cutlass. Everything with me is a project, all right? It's never like, change the oil and spark plugs, and he never, he was just always a great guy. So I just want to shout out and say I miss you already. And you can be here today, you can be gone tomorrow. You just don't know. So I just wanted to get that out. And that tally of mine keeps going. It's about 63 people now that have passed away since December of 2012. And not all of them were elderly, almost half of them were right around my age. So it's, but anyhow, outside of all of that, before we get into Costa, the world wants to know, how are you doing, Joe Cardinal?
I'm doing great. Actually, I have good news to report on the family front. Haley was in New York, my daughter, and she ran the triathlon there this morning. And I think she came in the top 300 overall. So we'll get some of her specifics, like for her age group and when women and things or whatever she placed. So that's huge news for us. Yeah, this is her
Well, what's the other huge news about her? I don't think you've shared this.
Oh, I don't. Yeah, she's engaged to be married. So that's very exciting. That's a few weeks old now. So it's funny how you move on, you forget about that. But yeah, I haven't said anything about that. So I got to give her boyfriend credit. He did a great job. Kind of did the ideal proposal. He pulled it off, surprised, and she was in tears. Actually, she got a hold of us when you and I were in the bar. We had we were drinking when she called in tears, and so we were able to get a shot for her. But yeah, she's back. She's back training, working out. They canceled the swim there. I don't know any of the details. I was supposed to be in New York with her, but a friend had a wedding. He got remarried yesterday, so we ended up staying local. But the last two triathlons, so she's originally a swimmer. She swam in college. She did run hurdles as well. So she definitely has the kind of multi-sport discipline thing, but she really gets way ahead on the swim because most people are runners who then transition to triathletes, but they struggle in the water. And she's just like a fish, so she usually gets way ahead of everybody in the water. And in the last two, she did the Chicago one and the New York one. And both times, because of water conditions, they've canceled the swim. So what they end up doing is you end up running that distance. So it's like a run, bike, run. It changes from a triathlon, but she still was able to do well. But, it took away one of her strengths, honestly. But either way, that was hot off the presses this morning. That was some big news for the family. So yet again, she delivers. So yeah, looking good today.
Great. Congratulations. Tell
Thank
her I
you.
said, yes, tell her I said congratulations.
I will, for sure.
Yeah. So let's get right into Costa Cordes, man. Come on, buddy. What's up?
We're doing good out here. So, for whoever doesn't know, I live out by Denver, Colorado. I had Jason Bender visit me once or twice, that you had on the podcast, close friend, been out here since 2013. So
That long already?
that long, Tony. So we're going on 8 years in September, mid-September is the 8-year anniversary of my move out here. So it's been quite a while. When I left you guys, we're still at the old gym.
Yeah.
At the Kings. But out here, other than missing the training, it's great. Great weather, good economy. Don't have to deal with the inner workings of Chicago. So it's been a happy life out here. Good for the kids.
It's a gorgeous state. I got to visit it just I think last summer. Just kind of it was one of the states that in Chicago you could travel to because of whatever the COVID numbers were, and you could come back in and not have to quarantine.
Sure.
So we spent a 2 weeks there, and man, we put a few thousand miles on the rental car. We landed in Denver and then drove to all the corners. We hit like 4 national parks. I mean, that says something about a state. If it had in one state, you can get like 4 national parks like that, and they're all different. I mean, it's amazing the diversity in Colorado. I mean, you've got beautiful mountains and forests and canyons. I don't know, like imagine you've been there 8 years or whatever. You've probably checked it out all over. And Colorado's a cool town, a lot of cool architecture there.
Colorado, what town?
Denver,
Denver,
he means.
Yeah, that
for
means
sure.
Denver.
Yeah.
The Capitol building alone, people just go to see it.
Yeah, it's something else. So yeah, I can understand why you wouldn't want to come back.
Well, we filmed the Snap No Tap out there. We flew into Denver. Well, Costa was living here at the time, but we flew into Denver, and then the thing was filmed in Boulder, Colorado. But we didn't really get to see any of it because, I mean, we were shot after
Yeah,
I was all beat up.
We were beat up. It
Yeah,
was 8-9 hours of filming, and it was really cold and snowy
yeah,
at the time.
shitty weather, and I had all these terrible injuries, so I spent most of the time in the hot tub back at the motel room. All we would do is go out and get something to eat and then go straight to the room. But it was so I mean, that's it. I mean, I saw the mountains, but just when we were driving, what I found difficult for me, at least this is in Boulder, there's no such things as neighborhoods. there was no ethnicity. All the restaurants were like fast food, right? I never saw any established kind of restaurants. And I'm not saying they're not there. I'm just saying that we didn't see it. Um, so it's a different thing that I'm used to.
The food here is not anywhere close to what you can get in Chicago. Chicago is world class.
Yeah.
When it comes to that. All the little ethnic spots, like you mentioned, Greek, Italian, Polish, Czech, Lithuanian, Puerto Rican, anything you can think of, you can get in Chicago at top quality. Here, yeah, we don't have that. It's a lot harder. I still haven't found Greek food. I have to actually make stuff myself. And even in Chicago, I had a tough time with most of the places since I know what it's supposed to taste like and what I expect. I have a little bit of higher standard, but at least you can find it. Here, there's just no way. Forget it. I don't even try anymore.
Haley said she had a similar problem when she lived in Boston for a couple of years, that they just didn't have the diversity of food that she was used to from Chicago. We are pretty spoiled here for that, at least.
I'm surprised to hear that about Boston.
Yeah, I
Frankly.
would think so too. It's a huge, kind of established, world-class city, but I guess just ethnically, it's not as, it's definitely geared more towards, people moving in and out for like the various colleges and things. But you couldn't even just find, she said, like neighborhood Mexican, like, in Chicago, every neighborhood has like a good pizza parlor and a good Mexican place, just even if it's just a dive Mexican where you can get some tacos. She said it was like you either had chain stuff like Chipotle or then some super high-end fancy Mexican, but there was no just go to like your standard Mexican, I want to get some tacos thing. And she's like, how can I live someplace that I can't do that regularly? That's
the down and dirty, best tasting stuff you'll ever get.
Right.
I remember a couple years back when I brought the kids over we went to Milwaukee to visit my in-laws, and we stopped in Chicago to take the kids by the Navy Pier. There's a little old man right at the end of it. He had a little taco stand, and they were probably the best tacos I had in the past 7 years. I had to fly back to get it. It was just
Right.
he was in a little box, maybe 3x3, but the best thing you'll ever have.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
tacos.
When I initially moved from Cleveland to Chicago, I was 23 years old, and, I moved, and Chicago's very similar to Cleveland. Joe knows that now with the ethnicity and all of that. It's identical, really. But you miss things yet you're not prepared to miss. Like I miss some of the food in Cleveland. I still do. The certain pizzas, the Mr. Heroes, Roman burger, the chili dogs, the corned beef, things like that. I miss the barbers that I had. Your auto mechanics, all that. The newscasters. It takes a while to adjust, and it was okay in Chicago because food wise, I mean, Chicago's such a big city, it doesn't have the Roman burger or anything, but pretty much everything I got used to. But it would be difficult for me to leave Chicago unless I moved back to Cleveland. It would be difficult because of all of this that I'm used to, and I really enjoy that kind of stuff, the food and the culture and everything.
Yeah.
Now, speaking about moves, I don't know much about your life story, but obviously you immigrated here, right? So tell me where did you start from? When did you come over?
I did. So I moved back to the U.S. at 18 years old to go to school. My parents met in Chicago, actually. So there was a little bit of a back and forth. They were first generation immigrants to Chicago, and they live in a few other places in the U.S. But after they met, and then when my mom got pregnant with me, my grandfather at the time got really sick with cancer, my mom's dad. So she wanted to go and see him. So I ended up being born in Greece, in my hometown, Kalamata, essentially by accident. Otherwise, if my grandfather wasn't ever sick, I'd be born in Chicago. And then a couple more places they moved around when I was a little kid, Houston, and then LA. And that was the last place they gave up, decided, okay, we're done with the US, let's go back home. So I was 8 years old at the time, finished second grade here in the US, and we moved back. Went through high school there. Great life for a kid living in a small town in Greece. about 50,000 people, so similar in size to Boulder. Water on one side, surrounded by mountains all around. Very safe. Very low levels of, just like petty crime, that sort of thing. And then when I turned 18, I decided, hey, time to see the world. And I decided on Chicago, mostly because we still had family, friends, and some connection for me to go to, and not show up at a town where I know literally no one, but there's a few people that if I need something, they might be able to help out. The plan for me was to stay, 4 or 5 years, finish college and move back. But, life happens, things change. Greece went through a lot of troubling times economically. And then every year I was thinking maybe it's time to go back. I would look at things and it just wouldn't make sense for me at the time. I'm like, okay, let's push it back a little bit more and let's stay here instead. And then wife and kids. And now for me to take them back there and start over in the country with limited means, essentially, and really tough economy, it makes no sense. So I'm pretty much staying here, and I'll go visit Greece once in a great while, just to see family and vacation a little bit, which is perfect for that. But I'm here now.
When did you? Oh,
Oh,
go ahead.
Joe.
I was just going to ask, when did you start training? Were you training in Greece growing up?
I was training in Greece. So, and I was even training in LA as a little kid. So I started with some kind of Taekwondo. I remember the old Korean master had pictures with Chuck Norris on there, and I loved my high flying kicks, and I was watching all the Kung Fu movies, and, like any little kid, I, wanted to be a ninja. So I was jumping off tables, jumping off kitchen counters, trying to do high flying stuff, busted my head open 3-4 times onto kitchen counters. I have a gap where hair doesn't grow here that was just gushing blood, and my mom was wearing a white t-shirt at the time. I just went and sat on her lap. After she heard the loud bang, when I took down half the cabinets in the kitchen from climbing, she's like, what was that? She was taking a nap, just laying back. I'm like, oh, nothing, Mom, I'm fine. And I just went and sat there, my head hurting. And then when I got up, her shirt had turned red. So I was a little bit rambunctious, that kind of stuff. But then once we moved back to Greece, I mean, there was kind of a gap there. 3rd grade, there wasn't a lot of martial arts in my hometown. A couple of karate schools and taekwondo school, but I got more involved with soccer, learning how to play that. My dad played soccer semi-pro, even in New York, as an immigrant. So he always wanted me to learn that, and I got to be pretty good at it. And it was really fun and created a lot of memories and a lot of friendships too. So as a kid new in the neighborhood, in a town, the team sports really allowed me to make new friends. And while I spoke Greek, or I should say I understood it and was able to speak it, I had an accent, so I got made fun of and bullied a little bit by the local kids. So being with them constantly and playing and all that and showing a little bit of athletic ability helped me with that a lot. But then, the bug was there. So around 10, 11 years old, I started, buying all the black belt magazines and the local, Greek black belt type magazines, and looking through and trying to figure out, okay, so I want to do this. So I found a couple of, it was a Shotokan karate school. I did a little bit. And then Muay Thai, you started hearing things about Muay Thai. So I'm like, okay, I got to find something similar to that. So there was a kickboxing coach that taught out of a lifting gym. They had like a bag and a little bit of space. Hooked up with that guy. He left a lot to be desired as far as training. And then I was lucky enough that my small town had a guy named Dimitris Gladzakos, who, I mean, if he was in the US, he'd be top-notch trainer. He was former special forces, so a lot involved with that kind of stuff, and still is. But he was actually on the History Channel a few years back when they were doing that travel program where they went to different countries and showed off different martial arts. He was for the Greek side. So he had experience in various arts, and he brought Muay Thai to Kalamata. At the time, there was another 3 or 4 guys, maybe in Greece doing it. So he brought that, and then around 1990, I want to say 96, 97, maybe about a year or so change before I moved back to the US is when he started bringing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to Greece as well. So he was essentially the first guy to bring grappling of any style to Greece. So I had that. Obviously, it was in its infancy, didn't get exposed as much, but he also had, you know, other styles of grappling training and all that. So I super lucked out there. And then moved to the US, met Bender, Jason at Carlson Gracie's, along with a whole bunch of other stuff. And then I was really struggling with the fact that I didn't really have the American wrestling style background. And you had guys in there that could just take you down over and over and over and control you with their wrestling that, you know, just wrestled in high school. You know, nothing amazing. Even though there was a couple of guys, you know, Division I, Division II, Division III, even at Carlson Gracie's, I really struggled, and I was trying to get them to teach me stuff. And I don't know if they didn't have the time. Maybe they felt like they'd be disrespectful towards the school if they're teaching me stuff on the side. But I had a hard time finding any type of wrestling because I could tell that the controls are different, right? Because even when I hit blue belt, if a guy came in fresh and he just had a couple of years of wrestling, couldn't deal with it. So I kept on looking and looking and looking. Like, how am I going to find somebody to teach me some wrestling? And I was on a forum online asking around, trying to like, hey, is there any wrestling in Chicago anywhere nearby? I live on the north side. And I met this weird dude named Bruce Lee, who I thought it was a fake name. And he invited me over. I think it was that MMA.TV, the underground forum or something, where we made the initial contact. And he invited me out to, I think it was a tool and die shop the first time. Yeah. And you weren't around, Tony, that day. It was Bruce, Javier, and I want to say Martin was there too. We were just training. And at the end, I finally, after getting my ass kicked, obviously, and, you know, Bruce showing me all this stuff and teaching me and helping me out, I kept on pushing Bruce, like, what's your name? What's your name? What's your name? Why won't you tell me your real name? I thought he was messing with me. I thought it was just a code name for a forum. But that was my initial entry into catch wrestling.
That's cool. You know, I think a lot of people who didn't wrestle in school have that, you know, even here in the US, run into that same problem where it's very hard to get, you know, once you're out of the school system, you know, like let's say you graduated, say, well, how can I learn wrestling? Because it's so geared towards school and competition that, you know, I think that's changing a lot now. I think there's people who are realizing there's a market for it to teach just, you know, wrestling to people who are, you know, wanting to learn it as a martial art, you know, or as to supplement their martial arts. I think, you know, that has changed a little bit over time, but yeah. And a lot of times there are people who are like, they wrestled in school, but I don't think they ever thought about like, I think the one thing in martial arts is you're always kind of thinking of the next generation. Like if you're with it enough, you tend to start to think like an instructor, like how would I teach this or how do I pass this on? But I don't know if, you know, a lot of guys I've met who wrestled in school or whatever, I don't know if they necessarily have that in their mind. It's just kind of like a sport they played. You know, it's like if you play soccer, you may not want to be a soccer coach, you know? And so
Sure.
I feel like maybe that's what happens. So a lot of times when you're kind of going to them, hey, can you show me something? It just doesn't, sometimes I think they're almost surprised, you know, but it's very
right. Because wrestling is set up differently. Like a martial arts school is all about personal, like really, really close instruction. And, you know, you move up the ranks and, you know, you start instructing the lesser belts and all of that. Wrestling's not like that. You know, you got, I mean, if you wrestle, let's just say like high school, you know, at best you have 4 years. Some guys don't even have that. Yeah. And you're right. It's more about, you're there to not learn. You're not there to learn the style of wrestling. Okay. You're not there to learn every technique in the history of wrestling. You're there to just get better at what you do. So you may not be exposed to a lot of techniques that, the coach is just going to make you do what you can do. So yeah, it's a whole different vibe. It is than most martial arts. And again, I'm speaking generally. There's probably wrestling programs that are a little more educational, but
Sure.
yeah,
And my kind of basic understanding, I mean, obviously I didn't go to high school here, but the variation in coaching ability is huge as well. I mean, you have guys that really wrestle college and all that, and then some smaller programs where it's just a dad that's able to go and coach a few hours a week to keep that team going. Because it happens with other sports all the time too. I know locally, I mean, a couple of soccer clubs got started by dads, and they weren't anything special playing soccer, so they can only teach so much, right?
I believe that Bruce's coach, one of his coaches, never wrestled a day in his life. He just was book learned and studied that way, which is fine. I mean, that you know, um, that's just even sometimes in boxing is like that. Not every boxing trainer actually ever even put on a pair of gloves. Uh, I don't think Ray Arcel ever fought. I could be wrong, but I don't think he did. Whatever, it doesn't matter. But yeah, I get your point. But yeah, I think there was a time when you first started. I was in and out of the hospital, but I wasn't. I had the brain stuff, and round number 2 of that. And I heard about you, and then when I got to meet you, it was like we were joined at the hip, and then we started working out, and everything was cool. And but the thing that you suffered from back then was it was hard for you to get in condition because of your back. You had like bad back problems like I did, but yours, but you're a gifted guy. You're uh, one of the guys that I endorse, because and you're a double wrist lock killer. That's your move. And yeah, I miss you. I wish you were still here because we've thought a lot alike in the way we approach um, fighting and what have you. Whereas that's just kind of hard to find.
Yeah, that double wrist lock, it has to be probably my favorite move there is out there. Double wrist locks, and I've been really working on that front choke and front face lock combo as much as possible. Finally getting that down.
Yeah,
where
well, it's
where I can
there.
actually pull it off, and some step over stuff that's coming along nicely. My training has been haphazard as usual. Getting to the gym, depending on what kind of schedule I'm keeping with work and kids, has been tough, but I always make time at the house, hitting my hip ice and sit outs and all that stuff. Not as much sprawling and jumping, because that typically is what affects my back the most. And very recently, I just finished this program, I guess you should call it. It was a 10-week of decompression for my vertebrae. So I was just getting hooked up around my hip, and they're yanking the spine apart. So it moved my vertebrae back a good quarter inch, which represents about 50% improvement there.
I was born with stenosis, and I had the first time that I remember having a back problem was I was roughly 16 years old, and my back went out. I mean, I'm like, oh man, what is this? And it felt better the next day, and so in essence, it was happening like once a year that would happen. Now I was putting my body, with the wrestling actually. If it wasn't for the wrestling, I probably wouldn't have been able to do anything else. I mean, it actually helped me. To the only thing later on in life, I can't do the bridges because that bending backwards is what, the back arch is what ruins it for me, my back. But and then when I was lifting super heavy, like a lot of heavy weight, my back would go out a lot. So once I laid off lifting super heavy, I mean, common sense, my
Right.
back felt better. But every so often, I still get it. I'll always have it. There's really nothing you can do about it. But for those people out there that are back sufferers, what you got to watch out for is you compensate, and therefore, in order to not have your back hurt, You may walk or move differently, and now you're putting strain on other things. Like I got bad hips. I broke my hip 3 times. I got knees, everything. So you have to watch out for that. It's just tough. But you and I, we've gotten through it. When the shit gets too bad and you can't move, you just quit. You just stop. You rest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've had my first episode with my back. I think I was around 13, and that's when we found out what I had. So I have a slipped vertebrae. Essentially, the pars joints have broken. It's called spondylolisthesis and spondylolisthesis. So it's a combo. The par joints is broken, and the L5 has slid in towards basically my stomach. So it's off its actual basis. And it was off about halfway. And then 10 weeks ago, when I first went to that Rock Creek and Spine here, I compared my x-rays that I took 10 weeks ago versus the ones that I had from 13. And all the working out and training, despite the pains that I went through, it actually stabilized it there. There was no difference, other than a shift to the left, which is what caused the shut off of that nerve. And I have drop foot on the left leg, so I can't control the leg up and down, or the foot, I should say. So now with this shift back, I mean, for 10 weeks, I stopped training, essentially. Just walking 30, 40 minutes a day, and some light upper body stuff, neck, grip, that sort of thing. And some pulling, especially the hanging from the bar and the rings. But, now I'm at a point where I can pick it up again, get all the muscles, now that they're slowly getting used to the new position, get them tight again so it doesn't move back to where it was. And hopefully we'll have a renaissance at 40 and the body can start doing stuff. You never know. But me, I'll keep pushing.
Well, you got to keep, you do have to try. I don't know if I've never personally met, nor have I ever heard of anybody that got to, like a high level of athletics that didn't have injuries or something, and I know a lot of, let's call them couch potatoes, for lack of a better term, people who really never did much. And they're like, look, you guys, you athletes, you're always banged up, you're always injured. And, you can't argue with them because they're correct. We do have these things, but it's just, for me, it was always the quality of life. I excel. I hit a world-class level at what I was doing, and not a lot of people can say they could do that. And I've reaped benefits beyond just the physical, a lot of mental benefits. And, there's something to say to that. Now, with the head trauma, that's something you can't play with. And that's why I watch when you have an aneurysm. And like I said, my first one was, well, my only one was in 93, but subsequently I had, those issues when I met you, post concussion syndrome and all of that jazz. And like harking back to Steve, the mechanic that passed away, that if your back goes, or you blow your arm out, or you break your hip, you can have surgery, you can recover. But if something happens to your head, you could die on the spot. So, I had to quit all this fight and shit, couldn't do things because of that brain. So, the only time I like to, if I'm getting into a self-defense situation, it doesn't matter because, I got to defend myself one way or the other, but it's sound to just heal. And yeah, with your back or my back, or Joe has injuries too. Everybody has injuries. Bender had them. Joe Dankowski had them, surgeries and stuff. You just got to set it back, man. You got to just heal. Let it heal. And in the meantime, study your theory, learn whatever it is that you need to learn, no matter what style you're doing, or even if you're not even in athletics, but you had an accident, just don't let your mind go to mush, read, study, learn.
Oh, definitely. I mean, and as much as you harp on it, I don't think people still really realize how much better you can get sometimes, even not training physically, but training mentally and going through those scenarios in your head and practicing the move in your head.
Absolutely.
And trying to figure out, trying to visualize, almost like you're watching video, like, oh, when I do this move, I make this mistake, and visualize yourself doing it correctly. over and over. You know, I love the hip heist, getting off my back, right? Something I practice all the time, but I practiced it even more in my head. Just sitting there, I'm like, okay, how is Tony doing it? And I can't do it. Why can I get myself up off the ground? And I had a problem with it in the beginning. It wasn't clicking. It clicked in my head first before it clicked in my body.
Well, you know, that's important. It's got to click in your head, because if you're just using your body, you're going to have a problem. Now, when I was doing music, playing music, like not the drums so much, but jazz accordion, I would just play really, you know, fast notes and shit,
Mhm.
which meant nothing, just scales and everything. And my Ronnie Moon, my instructor, told me, you have to educate your fingers, okay? And you just can't just be playing like, you know, random. You got to repeat. And how he did it was, I did something. He says, "Now do that again." Well, I couldn't, because I didn't remember what I did. I was just doing it. It wasn't a thought in my head. So in jazz, what they teach you a lot is to sing or hum the notes. So, you know, ba ba doo ba doo ba da ba da da. So you can immediately repeat it. And that's how it is what we do it here with the wrestling or fighting. You can't just, you have to hear, you have to have it up here and transmit it, you know, to your muscles. Otherwise, you're just going to be doing sloppy, poor technique and bullshit like that. Uh, but also think about it like an engineer. Okay, say a structural engineer or whatever it is. These guys don't actually do. Okay, they're not going on a site and building. Right? They're all mathematics and they're all design and things like that. They're not hands-on, so to speak. Some may be, but generally they're not. It's all up here first, and then from here it gets to a piece of paper. From that piece of paper, it gets to whoever, and blah blah blah. And that's how you have to be with your training, with the fighting. It's got to start up here. It all has to be up here, and then everything else is cake, man.
So what would you say, Costa, is your kind of your mix of martial art styles? It seems like you obviously have a very wide ranging exposure to different systems. Like, you know, I'm sure that changes from time to time, but like, what's your approach, you know, as far as, I don't know how you could describe it.
Um, I mean, my heaviest influence has to be, you know, Tony for the grappling, and part of the striking, and then Muay Thai for my striking. Initially, I kind of got steeped into that, so I always loved my straight punches, my elbows, the clinch work, upper body, and then combining that with the catch wrestling by far. Takedowns, I like the Tony approach. Swift hook to the jaw. I've avoided, I mean, I started wrestling, you know, later in life. Obviously it was almost 20 years old, when I hooked up with Bruce and Tony. Developing a fast, good shot. Well, technically it's proficient, it's still slow. Knees don't work as much. Things hurt. So I prefer upper body entanglements as much as possible. You know, I guess Greco style, if we're gonna, you know, put it in a box.
It seems appropriate.
Yeah. And it seems more appropriate for self-defense scenarios. I don't plan on getting face planted, sprawled on by somebody into the concrete. I'd rather use my sprawl as a weapon, the way Tony shows us, right? And avoid getting underneath somebody, because you don't know what the guy knows either, right? So once we have, you know, concrete, if you're in a bar, you have all these other weapons. I want to avoid being down low where I lose that mobility. So, you know, striking is paramount, you know, and I keep that simple. I'm not as fast as Tony is with my hands, but you know, learning angles helps you eliminate that disadvantage, right? Because if my angle is correct, if I can get the angle on the guy, I can reach him faster than he can reach me, because he has to turn around and face me, right? And I was taught that by an older boxer as a kid too, even at the Muay Thai school in Greece, right? Moving side to side, not just standing in front, exchanging in the pocket, especially if you're slower, right? Get your angle, hit him that way. It meshed right in with Bruce and Tony teaching me the same thing for takedowns. You know, I had a slow shot and I'm kept on trying to do a double leg on somebody and not working. Well, once they finally drilled into my head to, hey, move off the straight line a little bit, you get a little bit closer, you bypass all the hand fighting essentially, because their hands are over here and you're on their side, boom, you can take your shot, right? And it applies to everything in fighting. So you can use those teachings and for any style that you're doing, right? You can incorporate that. So for me, basic strikes, lots of catch, even standing, our double wrist locks, our front chokes, avoiding the ground as much as possible. But when I'm there, ending it as quickly as I can. That really what it comes down to for me.
That's interesting because you have pretty much the same approach. You know, that's how I was. You know, the distance and angles is in working with that is so important, and not being afraid to be within striking range. You know, a lot of guys want to be way out here, get in close, but if you know what you're doing and you got a lot of movement, the guy can't figure you out. See, I wasn't the world's greatest takedown guy either. I mean, I did what I did because I was quick, so I had my specific takedowns that I like to use. But these were important to me because I could strike, and you know, in a street fight, especially, that's first and foremost. That's what you're looking for. You know, you're not looking to, oh, I'm going to flop to my butt and see how this goes. You know, you're not thinking that. You know,
Yeah,
that's
not at all.
silly shit. But even you know, even wrestling per se, got an interesting story to tell you guys. Kevin, uh, you know, God rest his soul. 4 years ago, he passed away. I got killed. He had a buddy, uh, and you know, Kevin was a tool and die guy. So this guy showed up at the shop once, and they were talking, and he had a son. This guy had a kid who had gone to the University of Michigan. He was a wrestler at the University of Michigan, and he was a damn good wrestler. So his father tells me this story that he got into it with a football player, a University of Michigan football player. And it got to a fight. And you know what the wrestler did? Boom, boom, boom. Knocked the guy, knocked the football player, knocked him out. No wrestling, just boom, 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 through the hands and knocked the football player out. And you know, and I smiled because I never got to meet this kid, but he's thinking, you know, this is what you do. This is a fight. You know, this isn't a sport now. So it was kind of, you know, there was a guy that I wish I could have met just to talk about that story.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. And you'll see some guys that just, you know, have it naturally. Did the kid do any boxing training or striking training, or was that's the natural response for him?
That was his natural response because his father just said he was, you know, the kid was a wrestler. But I mean, I don't know the kid, so I can't go into depth. But yeah, no, he didn't. His father did not equate that he had any boxing training. But you know, let's put it. Hey, he did what he felt like he had to do. And I've known football players in the past that have trained boxing. You know, and you would think, and these were like uh, linemen. You would think, well, they'll just tackle somebody in a fight. No, they don't want to do that either. You know, they're a little more astute. So they wanted to learn how to throw their hands and, you know, and deal with it like that, which is great. But yes, in a street fight, in a street scenario, I'm not saying you don't go to the ground. I mean, you don't know, that may happen. But first line of attack and first line of thought, in my mind, has 100% always been striking. How can I take this guy out without getting, you know, engaged too deeply and worrying about somebody else jumping or, you know, what have you. So striking, not just punches, but kicks, knees, elbows, headbutts, all of that jazz. So,
Headbutts especially, I love those.
yeah, because you know you're in there. You know you could. You know, Roberto Duran used to do that. He would hook like this. You know, Johnny Lira, the boxer, started this death thing. he would tell me that, because he knew Duran, and that was one of the things Duran would do when he would throw his hook. Boom, he'd lean in with that head, and sometimes a lot of times he'd get away with it, but sometimes he'd get caught. But yeah, boom, you lean in with that freaking head. It's a tool, and you got to think this is like a bowling ball. The weight of your head is close, and you come in there with that, and from all different angles. You come up this or that. Just be sly and subtle with it. It's a devastating weapon, and it's a weapon that hasn't been utilized because in boxing, naturally, where boxers know all about it. I mean, maybe not to the everything, but you're not allowed to use it, right? So that would have been you can't do it in wrestling, any of these sports. So it can be very sophisticated if you would take your time to learn how to do it. And it's a weapon that is very underutilized in the world, but boy, it's savage.
There's only one that I know of, other than us discussing it and practicing stuff like that, since we don't really have rules. But as far as a rule-based art, the only one that I can think of is the Muay Thai variant, I guess, the Burmese boxing, Lethwei, I think it's pronounced. They use headbutts in the ring.
It changes a lot because I've watched. I'm actually kind of fascinated with that too. I have a Muay Thai background back in the 80s. Actually, I trained at Degerberg too, but seeing that and how they use it, how much it changes the game for, like when you lock up in the clinch, you're at a lot more risk for that if they can just duck and hit. And they have some really amazing knockouts, and just they use them in combinations with their elbows, and knees, and they set them up. It really changes the game a lot, and it's something I'd like to, I think. Yeah, I think it's funny how like you kind of forget about these tools sometimes if you're training in whatever combat sport, like Muay Thai or boxing or whatever. You really have to. Like I said, seeing those Lethwei fights and stuff, I realized, wow, how devastating of a thing that is, and how you should really incorporate that regularly in your training. So yeah, it'd be fascinating to learn some of their like setups and combinations with the head there. But especially because they're doing it deliberately. It's been something they practiced for a long time.
Well,
It's
yeah,
not
and
an
then with the
accidental
grappling,
sneaky technique, right?
yeah, but it's sneaky in grappling as well, and it's not, what we do, what I do at least, because it's there, top and bottom, on the ground. You can get it, and um, and then you can simulate it too. You can transmit your power. So what I mean is, let's say your cross chest, for example. I'm on top, and to go down and try to headbutt him may not be, let's say it's just not practical, but you can transfer it. You can add by putting your forearm. Now you're creating more. You're closing the gap, and boom. Now you can. This transfers the power. Okay, it's all about transmittal and things like that, and there's a lot to it. Believe me. And it's not, you can't do it. Nobody does it because you can't do anything like that in a grappling tournament, whatever. So there's just so much that grappling exposes you to in a dangerous way that for the last 25 years, people have been nonchalant about it. They gotten away with it because the rules prevent it. But there's stuff out there, that can really open your eyes and negate 2 years of training, because you're like, shit, I never even knew this could happen. Well, it can happen.
Yeah. And you're practicing specific scenarios or moves without considering the option that the other guy has of a headbutt. And now you're in a world of hurt. And again, 2 years wasted training something that, it doesn't work when strikes are involved or when headbutts are involved.
Yeah. Gouging.
Right. The UFC used to have headbutts, right? If I remember correctly.
Yep.
Mark Corman
on,
used to just ground and pound with his head. And they took that out, right? And it changed the whole dynamic.
Yeah, it used to be when they put someone in their guard, because you could use your arms to kind of monitor their arms, but that left your head open. Like you only had two, it was 2-on-2, but how did you defend yourself? It was always kind of this, I need to defend against 3 possible strikes if I'm on my back there. Not even to mention like, obviously street stuff that could go, to the groin or whatever. But yeah, it was very dicey when you were put on your back. You had to be a super high level guy not to take punishment back then. And I think it changed the game significantly, taking that out. And I really regret that. I mean, I get that obviously, they had to stay in business and it was very dangerous, but yeah, it definitely, evolved the techniques in a less street sort of way.
Well, eye gouging is the simple, not the simplest. It's not as simple as people think. I didn't mean to say it that way, but it's more. I mean, it's there's more chances for it. Okay, it's easier to apply. That's the word I was looking for in more scenarios, and it really is. And that right there, just I don't care how much advanced somebody may be, if they're not prepared to defend their eyeballs, their face, they're done. Forget your arm bars, forget your toe holds, and all of that. You get poked in the eye, boy. Or you get your eyes pressed, which it's not a good thing. It's just it's just not.
Right.
We were talking. I don't know if you watched the show last week, Special K, but Joe ran into a guy that knew Rodvon, and I keep telling everybody about his strength. And this guy was mentioning that Rodvon would just pinch his palm with the nerves. It just made him cry. It made him cry. It made him tear up. He had tears in his eyes. Well, see, I went through all of that with him. Where he would grab. He didn't gouge my eyes out. He didn't have to. Okay. But he would just do things, my ears, whatever. And it made you realize how vulnerable you are. And it gets to the point where you can't constantly be trying to defend all of this and this bypasses just his strength. I could do it to him. And it becomes you instead of trying to always defend, you just have to be in a position of control. You cannot allow yourself to be in that vulnerable range. And that right there changes everything, because in traditional grappling and all these grappling tournaments, they have a pattern. There's a guy in the bottom, there's a guy on top, and they feel comfortable. Both people feel comfortable in that range. You can't do that, as you should know by working out with me, Kosta. Once you're on the ground, you made a mistake.
You're not comfortable.
Right. You're
Ever.
not comfortable with me.
It is not a comfortable position to be in. No,
Right.
not at all.
You're going to get screwed up. And then you're going to start realizing the answer is just don't go to the ground with somebody like us, because you're asking for, it isn't going to work out well.
Fish hooking him alone, but really, I mean, and if you think about how many, all the illegal techniques and all that stop fights, and they stop them for a reason, right? The guy can't continue because of a groin shot, because of a headbutt that cuts their face open, the eye gouge, and people's eyes swell up and they can't see anymore. It's because they work, right?
Yeah.
That's why they stop a professional fight, because of it.
Well, I used to say this for 40 years, 45 years almost, with a guy like Rodvon. The only way you'd have to knock him out. Okay. You'd have to try to knock him out somehow. Right. That's the thing. And once you get in it, this is not going to work out for you. This is not going to be a good day for you. So yeah, man, I tell you, I don't like watching a lot of this stuff, because my mind is working in a different realm, and I see all the openings and all the mistakes, because I have to take that negative approach as a coach. I have to look at the flaws in somebody. I can't sit there and always brag about how great you are. That's not going to get you far if somebody, does something to you. My job is to always look for your weaknesses and bad stuff. That's what a coach does in any sport. Okay. They look to capitalize, in baseball, for example. They had to shift. They tried to shift on, guys like Ted Williams and stuff, because they saw maybe here's a weakness for him. Maybe, he's a pull hitter. And, football, same thing. When Bob Hayes, the fastest man in the world, came up with the Cowboys, nobody could catch him. So all of us, he was like he found the vulnerability. So the defenses, they had to have the prevent defense that was developed to stop Bob Hayes. So that's how I look at things now. When I watch things, and I have for all these years, I see all the, all the mistakes and openings and stuff. With boxing, I was able to shut it off. I realized boxers can't grapple, right? So I'm just watching their head movement and everything, and okay. But with the MMA stuff, it's supposedly all in type of fighting. So when I see all these things, and no, it's not enjoyable for me for that reason, because it is claiming to be basically, almost anything goes, and it's not.
You mentioned MMA. There was a big fight last night, and it kind of segues into a question I have for Kosta, and then also you, Tony. I guess I'll put it out there. But Conor McGregor had a fight last night, and the point about it that I want to bring up is, I guess they had to get stopped because his leg was broke. It got stopped in the first round. Now, they've had a couple of nasty leg breaks, a couple recently, and just over history. I think you can find them on YouTube or whatever. Now, his wasn't the result of kicking someone or being kicked, but I think he had been doing a lot of leg kicks, in that round. And so your background, Costa, with Muay Thai, I guess. So one of my go-to moves, and it's talking about striking again, was leg kicks. It just seemed like a safe move for me. People usually don't defend down low. They're usually not conditioned for impact down there, unless you're really a trained fighter. It's a good way to kind of, put some pain on someone right away and maybe take away their ability to move. But now seeing the risk, if someone is trained, or even if a fluke thing happens, like if it goes poorly, it goes poorly very badly. Like you're taken out of the fight, your leg is destroyed. Has your thoughts, I don't know, what are your thoughts on leg kicking for the streets? Do you still, like, for me, I'm starting to shift that maybe that shouldn't be necessarily a go-to because of the risk involved. Like I might break a knuckle punching someone, but I can continue to fight. But if I lose my leg like that, I'm done. So I guess the question, do you still look to deploy that? And then do you think there's something in the way they're conditioning or failing to do with their legs that's leaving them vulnerable to these breaks?
It's hard to say. The kicks that I've seen where the leg has actually broken, and I saw this mentioned by a couple other, kicking experts, at least Muay Thai. The way they're setting their support leg, they're not turning their hip over, and it changes the angle that they're landing on their shin, and that's causing the break. I don't know how much that's actually true or not, but from the outside, it might make sense. But, for me, kicks, I typically always avoided them in the street situation. I don't want to be on one leg, even for a split second. I'd rather be on two. If I'm going to lift my leg up, it's because I'm kneeing you in the body or groin. And I prefer an upward kick straight to the groin versus trying to slowly badge your leg out as if I have 15 minutes to deal with you, right? So that's the big thing with the kicks, especially to the leg. I mean, it's not a one and done technique, typically. So I don't see the use for it as much on the street or in a self-defense scenario. I'd rather use something that could incapacitate you a little bit quicker. But the chance of a leg break, yeah, it's there no matter what. In tight quarters, or if you're in a spot where you don't really know your surroundings, you're walking down the street, there might be something sticking out that you haven't even noticed, and you can kick that. I've seen people hurt themselves on stuff that are just sticking out of a wall, right? I've seen Bruce Lee take somebody out with a double leg into a bar, for example, right? So your surroundings play an important role as well. So kicks, especially to the legs, like that, the leg kicks, I love them as a technique. They were always fun to do in practice, but to use them on the street, especially, or self-defense scenario where your life might potentially be on the line, I never thought of them as a really highly efficient move.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think maybe I'm coming around to that. seeing that now, but like I had some early success with it. When I would get in the ring with some guys who hadn't been exposed to leg kicks. Like my only real TKO was a leg kick where the guy was just not conditioned. It ended the fight. He just crumpled up. He took one shot to the leg and he was done. And so I just felt like, granted, a trained fighter, it's a different thing. Like you're right, it could go. They can take it for they can take those for 20 minutes and they'll be fine. It's like a cumulative thing for sports, but yeah, I'm starting to rethink that just because someone might, the chance that now I think that knowledge is disseminated enough for people for checking kicks and things like that, that has shifted now where I think I'm reconsidering it and talking to people who have that background to see what their impressions are with it too. But actually, kind of going back to Tony's perspective with the striking too. And I know Tony's relayed a few times on this podcast and just talking to me personally about his street confrontations. And really, I mean, the kind of model he relays there is, yeah, it's really boxing mixed with groin kicks and knees and things like that. That's what you're going to want to go to. That's the quickest way. That kind of, if you're keeping their attention up high with your strikes and then occasionally able to slip in that groin kick, that's your most effective. I mean, I feel like I'm stating the obvious in some ways, but I think it's like an important reminder. Sometimes we get so advanced in our techniques, we forget we don't think about the foundational stuff that you should be thinking about. But anyways, I'm rambling a little bit, but I want to get your guys' perspective on that.
Well, I've seen some of the world's best kickers slip and fall in the ring, right? I'm good with the cut kicks and things like that, but and too, as you get older, your bones sometimes they may get a little more fragile. You got to think about all of this. But yeah, I'm not a daredevil. See, when I fight, it's normally it's going to be a life or death thing here, so I don't want to put myself at any kind of risk. Now, simple kicks, fine, but yeah, sometimes you wind up, you're doing a good round kick, that's fine. But if you slip and fall, or the conditions on the street aren't proper, and you anything where you fall, or something like that, even beyond just breaking your leg, I just don't want to. I want it to be a sure thing. Okay. And that goes not just for kicks, that goes for any of my techniques. I'm not going to put myself, at a risk. I'll be a little more defensive, but not really like, when I say defensive, not like I'm letting you do the offense. I'm going to be offensive, but I'm going to be defensively offensive, I guess, if that makes sense. I'm just not going to do any high risk kind of maneuvers because for me, but I have a bigger arsenal to draw from than, let's say just a straight boxer or even a straight Thai boxer or something. So I don't have to worry about it. Now, I cannot comment on the fight last night because I didn't watch it. So I have no idea what happened. So it's got nothing to do with any of that. I'm just saying how I look at it. So yeah, I just, and true, there's many times, like he mentioned Bruce Lee, our Bruce Lee, the real Bruce Lee, as I like to call him, in a bar taking the guy down. A lot of times there's just not, you don't have the room to do something special, something, even a round kick. There's many times where you don't have the room. I don't know what to tell you, I mean, sometimes you do have the room, but sometimes you don't. You got to improvise, you got to be a little well-rounded.
But I mean, typically always, the basics are going to work best. And if you get really, really good at those, that'll solve your problems 90% of the time, if not more.
Yeah, the basics, the simple stuff. Muhammad Ali said years ago when I was a kid, I remember him on a television program saying, you don't get knocked out normally by the hardest punches. You get knocked out by the ones you don't see coming, right? Because you don't brace for it. So you don't, any boxer can see a punch coming from way back here when you're telegraphing. It's those little 6-inch punches that you don't see, right? That are coming out of nowhere, or a weird angle that you're not ready to defend against. And that's really important, and like Joe mentioned, if you break a knuckle or something like that, you'll go on. You get a compound fracture or something like that or whatever, you're not going on. And then what? Okay, then what in a street fight? Then what? Now you're basically almost helpless. What are you going to do? I tried wrestling one time when my knee was blown out. All right, I had a bad knee. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do anything I wanted to do. I had to give up. because I couldn't do what I wanted on the top. I couldn't do anything on the bottom. You know, when you're injured like that, I mean, this is like just sparring. This wasn't like a fight, you know, where I could actually do hits and, you know, all that other kind of jazz. But, and having a blown knee is not anywhere like a compound fracture. That's bad. You know, that's instant pain right there. So, yeah, you know, it's fighting. You know, you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. You know, fighting is it's a tough thing. You know, you're going to have nicks and scrapes and bruises and so on. Let's just hope it stops there. You know, contusions. Let's leave it there. You know, let's not go into having yourself damaged where you need to be hospitalized, and you know, because it can happen. So you want to mitigate that as much as possible, in my thinking. You know, but of course, see, I was a victim of, or I didn't get killed, but I mean, I knew people who got killed. I've been in, you know, Joe saw the area that I was raised in. He knows now. He got a better appreciation of my ultimate thing isn't like what happened to Conor McGregor yesterday, where he breaks his leg and the referee stops the contest and he gets wheeled out probably on a stretcher. With us, in my life, it was dead. You were dead, or you were left to fend. You know, somebody. You got to hope somebody will call an ambulance for you, and go through all of that jazz. So I saw it since the time I was a little kid. How if things go wrong, you may not go home. You could be dead, as opposed to just losing the match. You know, and no injury is great. I don't want to ever see an athlete get injured. But like I mentioned, I think on the Snap No Tap video series, you're still getting that paycheck. Well, when you're in a street fight, you're not only not getting a paycheck, you're not getting paid to beat this guy's ass or defend yourself. But if you get injured, you may actually lose your actual paycheck if you have a job that you can't go to or something like that. Or even if you defend yourself and the person turns around and sues you, you got to pay for a lawyer. You know, that could be 30 grand, who knows, you know, depending on how serious the thing is. So, you know, in a street fight, 99% of the time it may end up costing you money. You know,
Sure.
you're lucky if it doesn't. You know, if you can just do what you do, you know, defend yourself and get out of there, um then that's fine. But these are things people don't think about.
And you definitely need your legs to get out of there. I mean, sometimes running might be your last option, and if you break your leg because of a offensive maneuver you tried, you just took out that option from yourself too, right? You know, you start on one-on-one, you end up at 3-4-on-1 because his buddies show up. You know, at that point, you might not be ready to deal with that, or the risk isn't worth it to even try. So you use your legs and get up on out, right?
Well,
or you might be running from law enforcement.
well, I liked you because you had that striking background before you came to me. You know, you had a great instructor and so on, you know, so we could talk shop like that. A lot of people don't have that background, or they dabble in it, or they're learning it while they're going with me. And it's a different perspective. Nothing wrong with what they're doing at all, but it's, you know, just a different kind of perspective. And you know, I can't speak highly enough about Kosta, not just as a grappler or a martial artist or fighter overall. He's a great guy. He's just a better person than anybody can ever imagine. You're just a great guy. I miss you. It sucks. I mean, I'm glad for your life. I'm glad you're happy out there in Colorado, but it's Chicago's loss. It's Greece's loss. You know, but it's my gain in life when I met you. I became a better person because of knowing you, and you're always in my thoughts, and that'll never change. You know, so you're one of the good ones that I met through the years. That's just awesome.
Thanks, Tony. I mean, it's been, I consider myself so lucky to get to train with you, be your friend, meet the rest of the guys. You know, because of who you are, you managed to attract some of the best people around, right? You, Martin, Javier, forget Jason Bender. That was that was my fault.
Yeah, forget Joe.
I apologize. I tried to hurt him while he was here, but you know, he made it back.
I was
Uh,
hoping actually to have him on the show as a special guest, a surprise guest, to have the two of you guys go at it a little bit. But he's actually competing this weekend, so he
oh,
can't.
he is nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, he might be behind me with a chair, WWE style. Clock me.
I've got about 5 more minutes because I hear her pacing up and down. So I want you guys to continue on with the podcast because this is great to have Kosta on here, Joe. So keep him on, ask him a bunch of questions, and but let me just brag on him a little bit. You know, the saddest thing was when Kosta was always injured, right? It seemed like that's how you were when you were with me, and you couldn't really get into top shape. So you were the greatest like 1.5 minute wrestler I've ever seen, right? So for
Yeah.
like a minute and a half, you're like, oh, and then
When I was in good shape, it was 2 minutes.
yeah, right. But that's the thing, people don't get it. You have to be fit.
Definitely.
Oh yeah, you definitely have to be fit. And I mean, I'm saying more or less for um, when you're sparring in the gym, that kind of stuff, where you're not going all out. But still, you have to have that fitness. And here's the thing I tell everybody, I use this 10% thing. So like if you can go in the gym nonstop for 10 minutes, to me, that means you can go for about a minute in a street fight. Okay. There's no science behind that. It's just my observation through the years because your adrenaline is going, people start to hyperventilate and, whatever. So you have to have really solid conditioning. And like Luthez said, they used to be able to wrestle in those days for 2 hours. They'd go nonstop, right? Just, I mean, granted, they're not knocking each other out, but still, it's hardcore. They're, they had a level of fitness that was, pretty damn good. And it's not that they knew things that we don't know. That's not it. Scientifically, we're more advanced with the fitness and nutrition and all of that. The thing is, there's no reason for anybody to wrestle 2 hours straight. That's the thing. Back then, when they were putting on these shows and everything, even though they were works and stuff, they're still going. They're moving. You don't have that now. Wrestlers don't do it. Boxers don't do it. Jiu-jitsu guys don't do it. MMA guys don't do it. So there's no reason uh, for us to get in that kind of shape. Okay, so that's something to bear in mind. Try to get your fitness level way above any athletic sporting event right now. Okay, that's why I love boxers. Well, when I was a kid, the championship fights were 45 minutes. 15 3-minute rounds, even 12 3-minute rounds. Now that's a lot. Okay, they're really in good condition. It's a different kind of conditioning than amateur wrestling, but they're fitter because they go for a lot longer. Amateur wrestlers don't go 36 minutes, right? So it's fitness on top of all your techniques. It's that fitness that you have to have.
Definitely.
And that's what always seemed to lack at that point because you were always injured. Your technique, your knowledge. Oh, you pick this stuff up like a sponge. You're very smart. You're very into it. You love it, and you love it not as a fan. You love it as a competitor, and that's why even when your fitness was down and you were gassing, you could still you absorbed, you watched, you listened, you asked questions. You know, you're the best student anybody could ask for. You're the best training partner anybody could ask for. And you're the best friend anybody can ask for. So I mean, you hit three home runs with me as far as that goes. Yeah, okay, you're not Italian. So all right, we all have flaws, all right?
True.
But you're Greek, that's kind of close.
Close enough. Una faccia, una razza.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Gyros and French fries.
Yeah.
Right. Well, listen, guys, I'm gonna run. I gotta get upstairs. I love you, Costa. I hope
Love you, Tone.
Yeah, I
My
will
love to your mom.
I will. Well, she doesn't. This morning, she's like, "Are you people still going to be living here?" I'm like, "Who's you people, Mom?" It's just me. She's like, "Well, do you live here or are you moving?" I'm like, "Ma, she doesn't even know that I'm her son anymore." And it's a strain thing, very straining. And she
Sure.
gets frustrated when I don't respond. I mean, when she gets frustrated too. So it's just rough. So
Sure.
I told her I was coming down here in the basement, but I hear her pacing because she thinks she's alone. And then, like a lot of people, they would panic. And in a way, it's a shame because even the nurses and the neurologist and all the medical professionals said it's a shame that Joe Cardinal's not here because then my mom would want to be alone. Okay. But anyway, guys, I love you. I'll see Joe. I'll see you next week. Costa, keep in touch.
Will do.
Everybody out there, thanks for watching the podcast. Hey, the membership thing. We launched that last week. Joe, maybe you can talk about that because I've got to get upstairs, but sign up for this membership thing. It would help.
Okay, yeah, I'll make the pitch.
Bye, Tony.
Good enough. See you guys.
See you. Okay, he's off. But yeah, to the membership thing, if you're still in the listening audience, I highly encourage you to sign up. It's the easiest way and the cheapest way to help contribute and help us continue to do this. Obviously, all this content is free for you, whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on your iPhone for the podcast. Not to mention all the other free content and techniques that Tony has up on his YouTube page. So if you want to support this, if you want this to continue on, to have, discussions with Tony's students or other people that we come, from the martial arts that are able to join, and just if you're enjoying this and learning from it, or if you just want to support Catch going forward, every bit helps. Not everybody can come out and pay for, a week of training or join the Tri-C, which is obviously kind of the ideal. If you want your best bang for your buck, if you want to get in-person training where you can just go and learn from the man himself, that's the way to go. But obviously, everybody's in different financial situations, but I think everybody who's a fan or student of Catch Wrestling and of what Tony teaches in self-defense, this is a way to, encourage him to keep training and teaching and just support it. It's doing your little part for it.
Most definitely. And then, I mean, the best shape of my life was the couple of months of training where I was finally quasi injury free leading up to the 2003 seminar that Tony had at Triton. We were essentially doing the Lucky 13 expanded version. And I dropped like 40, 50 pounds of fat within a month. Could wrestle quite a bit. I could even take the impact from Bruce and Shoney Carter launching me. It was just an amazing time. So yeah, definitely anything you can get from Tony's site, sign up for the membership. I mean, it's the best investment you're going to make in your training career.
Yeah, and like I said, the entry level, it's just like I said, it's donation based. It's just $5 a month. It's like a cup of coffee. It's it's a minimum thing you can do to kind of send your way if you're gaining some benefit from the content we're putting out there. And obviously, there's increasing levels where we'll have videos out there that you can, if you go to the $10 level, you can get actual instructional videos, and of course, all of Tony's other levels of training still available. But this is just a way to kind of, if you can't do those things but want to pitch in, it's a huge help. So, but thanks again for all that. So what are you doing these days, Costa? What are you up to training wise? I heard you said you're working with local law enforcement.
Yeah, so I teach a Sunday class. Actually, that's where I was right before here. So essentially, all of them are Denver PD, except for one that's Department of Corrections officer. So we go through a lot of controls. Obviously, striking is not a technique that they are allowed to use, but we can still modify our stuff, how to control people. Pain compliance even holds that don't do lasting damage, right? And then basic wrestling on how to control a body versus slamming people on the ground, taking them out completely. So I show them a lot of that, and then plus we go in a little bit deeper into the Catch philosophy and all that if they do need it. But what was really surprising to me when I first met this group was how little training these guys go through when it comes to it. Just one example, they were telling me when they have multiple officers on the scene trying to take one guy out, they end up opposing their own force and keeping the guy up versus taking them down. One's pushing on this side, one's on the other. The training is very lacking. So it feels really good to be able to help them out. And this group I've had reach out and come to the gym maybe a couple months now, 3 months, and they're already using the stuff, and they're loving it.
So
So they've become big fans of Tony.
great. That's awesome. How did they find, do you have a gym that you run, or how did you
So
find it?
I don't run. I used to work at a UFC gym, just teach them kickboxing, Muay Thai. And then the head coach from there, really accomplished MMA fighter and Muay Thai guy, opened his own gym here. He's a good personal friend. So I started training there a little bit, and he asked me, hey, can you cover a couple classes here and there? And then we ended up, because of my work being so busy, and my time being kind of scattered throughout the week, I have a little Sunday group going. So they teach BJJ. They have a amazing wrestling coach now there, Veronica Carlson. She's in the Olympic committee. She's top-notch wrestler, world class. So she teaches wrestling once a week. So I learned a lot from her. We have a judo Paralympian, Dartanian, who teaches judo there. And then Muay Thai is covered by Ali, Coach Ali Hanjani there, as well. The gym's called Limitless MMA. It's here in Broomfield. It's 5 minutes from my house. And I teach our stuff.
Well, that's awesome. That's great that you're able to interact with all those different people from different styles and still spread the catch stuff, because that's one of my big concerns, obviously, is that, there's such a small handful of guys who've worked personally, at the duration like you have with Tony, that, know it very close and intimately, to be able to spread that on. It's good to see styles like Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu and stuff, they're so well established that, that the next generation is going to carry on, but catch is not in that situation yet. And so it's encouraging to hear that you're sharing that knowledge and spreading the word, because that's another thing that keeps it alive. It's a definitely big concern for me. I was going to kind of go back to your observation about, the police, about them not having the training. There's been a lot of discussion about that, in some ways it's almost because it seems like they're not allowed to have time and training for the, the hand to hand and the physical stuff, that there's almost the overcompensation, the reliance on lethal. They have to escalate much higher than they maybe necessarily would have to. Is that what kind of the feedback you're getting from them, or?
Quite a bit, but from my understanding is even the part, there's not as much training as there should be. Right. So there's a lot of factors involved in that, but definitely having the physical confidence that you can take and control somebody down would probably eliminate a lot of trouble. And also having a basic understanding of how the body works and where you can really hurt them versus just cause a little bit of pain in order to get them to comply. And that they just don't have that knowledge, and they're not taught it, and you still have to train it. If I don't train something for quite a long time, I might have it in my head, but the body doesn't want to cooperate. So they definitely need to be allowed the time, and should probably be included in their work schedule, right? Like, hey, you work 10 hours a day, 8 hours a day, 1 hour has to be training. You show up to work, and your first hour should be, hey, you're practicing how to put on cuffs on a resisting opponent, de-escalation techniques, physical, non-physical, all that should be part of their everyday work. That's the way I always thought I would run something like that if I was, dictator of the police. But it doesn't seem like that's the case. And at least here in Denver, and from what I hear reports and just reading the news all across the country, they don't have enough people, right? So, their numbers are dwindling. So they end up working extra shifts and more hours. And, you do a 12, 14-hour shift, it's hard to motivate yourself to, hey, I've worked all night, now I'm going to go and train for another hour or two to stay in physical condition, plus learn new stuff. That's asking a lot from a person, right? So it'd be nice to see in the future, funding going for their training, to help them out on that end. Definitely.
Yeah, it seems like it's kind of like penny wise, pound foolish. Like if they were willing to spend the money, in recruiting new guys and allowing them to have the time, like you said, take some part of just a required training, at least a couple times a week. If they can't do an hour a day, a couple times a week, just, you know, getting that confidence to physical, it would save so much, not just in, I mean, obviously the human costs of people, either themselves or whoever the suspect is getting hurt, but also just, yeah, all those lawsuits and things like that. Like even boxing, we talk a lot about, I've seen some videos on YouTube of, people getting kind of overwhelmed in a street attack. And if they just had good footwork and stance, they may not even, like I said, you don't even have to be offensively throwing punches back, but you could just move and evade, and avoid some of the obvious, like you wouldn't get blowed over, you could avoid things. And just that alone, just spending some time working your footwork and drills, could just, yeah, save a lot of people a lot of pain. And obviously they're going to be, at a much higher risk of running into conflict, day to day. So it's awesome that you're doing that. I think, there needs to be more of that kind of dissemination of knowledge to the law enforcement. I know obviously there's some cops who train like crazy personally, but I think it's
Oh,
all
sure.
they do it on their own. They see the need and they do it on their own. There's not like a systemic prioritization of that, which is unfortunate, because yeah, I think the more knowledgeable they are, honestly, probably the less lethal. A lot of times, yeah, it's when you're untrained almost, and sometimes being violent, that you can cause more damage. When you have the skill to control yourself, you can, and the other thing you learn is you learn to control your emotions and other things, and because you're dealing with it when you train. So yeah, that's awesome that you're doing that. So
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, Joe. I mean, you get panicky, right? Because you don't know what's going to happen. When you have the experience, you don't panic anymore, right? And the adrenaline dump that Tony was talking about earlier, it still happens, but you know how to control it. You know how to work through it. And then, I mean, everybody has gone with a spazzy first day white belt and gotten hurt. I mean, there's guys that are up a level belts in jiu-jitsu. I know that they won't train with guys like that, right? Or they don't let them roll and spar because they're all knees and elbows flying and hurting people by accident because they're gonna move the wrong way because they don't know the right way to move, right? So an untrained person can be very dangerous.
oh, absolutely. And sometimes, like, when I've been on the mat training with, the instructor will be like, hey, let's just do 50% right now. We're warming up. And someone who's new or has some ego, like the minute they feel in jeopardy or they're in a position, they take it to 11. Like, like it's hard to repress that urge of like, I've got to be on top. I've got to win. It takes some maturity to be like, okay, I'm not going to go 100%. I'm not, I can let this person put me, in a certain position or whatever. And just having that. Yeah. So exactly. When you're new, like you might be able to restrain somebody, but if you're always taking it to 11, yeah, that's yeah, whether you're training or in other things. Because there's like, even in your life, like we talk about street confrontations where they're like, obviously your life, some stranger or something you don't know, but sometimes there's altercations with, I don't know, coworkers or friends where you don't want to hurt them, just, okay, something got a little out of hand, but I don't need to disable them quickly. I need to measure my response, and the only way to really do that is, I think, if you're comfortable, you've been there before, and you can say, okay, I can respond with, like, at 50% here, just to control things until we can calm it down. Like you said, de-escalation. So, even in what I'd call reality-based things, it's not always necessarily that you want to put the lethal, like, do the groin strikes and eye stuff that we talk about. Sometimes it's, it's your neighbor or something that you got to see him next.
Right. You're not trying to break them
Right.
forever. Sometimes you just need to, control them. Essentially what, law enforcement should be doing to a point, right? And then also there's, physical jobs where those kind of techniques apply to as well, where you're not trying to brutalize someone. You know, working security at nightclubs, prime example, right? You're not trying to, or you shouldn't be trying to hurt somebody forever. You're trying to de-escalate a situation and move them out. And I did that work as a younger guy in Chicago, and I saw coworkers just going at it with people that were drunk out of it, weren't really a threat, and all they knew how to do was brutalize someone. So it escalated instead of de-escalating the situation, right? A little bit of training would have gone a long way for them too.
Cool, cool, cool. So, how's things else? What's going on with life? How's life treating you? Things good there?
Yeah, so all I do, it feels like, is work. So I'm working a lot. Got a promotion. So I'll be doing a little bit of traveling with my current job. Um, I'll be in charge essentially of all the service department in the western states. So Colorado, Texas, um, Utah, Pacific Northwest, California. So I'll be doing a little bit of traveling with that, but home base is going to be Colorado still. No plans to move yet anywhere. Just hoping to be able to go on a not short trip. I would like it to be at least 2-3 weeks and go visit Greece. It's been, gosh, 2-3 years now that I haven't been. So, my mom misses my kids. The grandkids are her life. She makes me
Sure. That's got to
call.
be tough being that far apart, yeah, from the
I
grandkids.
have to be on video with them, with the kids and my mom, at least every Saturday, Sunday, and during the week now that it's summer, even more if possible. She misses them, and it's great and hard at the same time because I know how much it hurts her that she's not seeing the kids all the time. And I had tickets for Greece for 2 summers ago, right before COVID hit. So I purchased them before all the lockdowns occurred. And I was thinking, okay, it'll be 2 weeks. They'll open back up. And then forgetting even what airline it was. And we got the email and here's your money back, and no flights out of the US going to Europe. Greece was a full lockdown. In Greece, I mean, people here were upset of sometimes of how everything was shut down and all, but in Greece you had to send a text message to leave your house. Wow. It was like a 200-300 euro fine. It's, and with the average wage there being 600-700 a month, it's like being charged a few $1,000s for leaving your house without your permission slip, right? So things were tight there, and so last summer I was scared to purchase tickets and just wait for the money to come back and not go. So I didn't even make the arrangements. And this summer now, with the change in positions, again, it's going to be, I just transitioning into that role. So be next summer essentially until I go.
Just a segue, because I think it's interesting for us in the US. So my son's in Thailand. I just talked to him this morning, and he was talking about how totally different the COVID situation is there. It's very interesting. It runs very different from us. So like when it first hit here, they were already in lockdown. Like I think in Asia they're kind of more used to pandemics. I shouldn't say that, but they they know the drill and they don't mess around. So like he was in like I don't think we locked down really till like March or April of that year. But he was already like in February, it's like, yeah, don't come into work. We're doing it remote, and so they're initially they had no, but now they're going through a bit of an outbreak there, kind of late. And then part of their problem now is vaccination. Like they just don't have the access. I mean, in some ways we're very blessed here that if you want to get it, you can get vaccinated, and I think we're benefiting from that. But what's the situation? So in Greece, how's vaccination going there?
It's hard to say. I mean, there's it's split. Half the country wants it and has gotten it. The other half is against it. Very similar to here for that. But it seems like everything is open now. Will they lock down again in September? Potentially. It was always in my head, even during the thick of it in the winter, that no matter what's going on around, I knew that summertime was going to be free and open there because they need the tourist income. So I have a couple friends on the islands and all that. Everybody's telling me everything's packed. There was an explosion of tourism because people were locked down for 2 years. They didn't get to go. So it seems as if all of Northern Europe is back on the islands in Greece. So we'll see how that ends up affecting things in the next few weeks. If there's another outbreak or increase and all that, it's hard to say. But as of right now, it's encouraging, I guess. Nothing too crazy.
Well, that's good. Hey, so do your kids speak Greek?
Not really.
No.
No, it's been so my wife is from here. She doesn't speak Greek. So all my kids would listen to is English at the house, right? They would hear me speaking Greek to my buddies, or when I call back home, but not enough to really be immersed in it. And I didn't do a good job there to teach them. A few words here and there. But I'll tell you, at least on my end, when I was growing up here in the U.S., even though both parents were Greek, and my dad especially, his English was sea level, I should say. I understood Greek, but I didn't have the confidence to speak it. Right? It was once I moved back home where my tongue came untied and I started being able to respond. I was always thinking in English. So maybe if I manage to take them down, before they become adults, but take them there for 2-3 months at a time, a couple summers in a row, that should help them to pick up the language. But that remains to be seen if that's doable or not. But it does get tougher as you get older, I think, to pick up the language. But their accent when they do repeat a Greek word here and there, that's spot on. So that's encouraging.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like a blessing if you can, grow up in a bilingual home. Kids get that, kind of stuff that people have to work their adult lives very hard at. You
Sure.
kind of get it for free. But like you said, yeah, if only one parent speaks it, or one family member, it's very easy to lose that. So.
Sure.
Cool. Well, I really enjoyed, because I don't think we've ever really talked, you and I, like I think the ship's passing tonight. When I was training there, you weren't there, and vice versa. So it's, and obviously I've seen you on the videotapes, and we met at one seminar, but it was super cool to actually get to talk and hear your background and stuff. Yeah, and I'm super pumped that you're doing what you're doing in Colorado and trying to spread the word and support things. So yeah, and I'm sure Tony would agree with me that anytime you want to be on, you're always welcome back for color commentary or just, whatever. So it sounds like you have a very busy family and work situation going on, so that may not be often, but yeah, anytime you're like, hey, I got some free time and just want to shoot the breeze and talk, fighting or whatever, it would be great.
Oh, I'd love that anytime. Especially if we can get together the whole group, Javier, Bruce. Well, I don't know about Bruce because I haven't even gotten a hold of Bruce even through Facebook or Instagram to even say hello there, because he's really busy. I know he's out on the West Coast. But Brian, Martin, if we can get the whole group together and do a podcast, that'd be awesome too, just to see each other's faces. Maybe grab Shoni.
Yeah, Shawnee was fun. Yeah, and we'll have to talk about, because I know like he and Tony rolled a little bit, right? I don't think we want to talk publicly too much about it, but like you got to witness that, right?
Oh yeah, I was there. So and Shoni was there for the seminar in 2003. And whenever Shoni could, he would come and train with us. I also got once in a while get to train with Shoni with Jason Bender at Shidokan, or he'd come to wherever gym me and Jason were working out at. Shoni is a pleasure of a person to train with. Really talented, really fun guy to be around. So yeah, if we can get him around, that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, we had him early on in the podcast, and he was dynamite, just a million great stories. But we should have him back. That would be great. So, but yeah, I think like having a class reunion would be good. We should have
Yeah.
a class reunion. Yeah, but yeah, Bruce is MIA. I think he's one of the last ones we need to get back on here. So maybe I should make an effort to really try and push for that. I think he said he wanted to do it, but again, it's so much like when you nail someone down. But anyways,
West Coast too, even harder.
Yeah. Although we had people from Cambodia on, so.
Oh, no way.
yeah. There's Russell Stutley,
That's where he is. He's in Cambodia.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I guess he's if you listen to the podcast, but he's part of the national. He's a boxing coach for their national boxing team, among other things. So he's a real fascinating guy. Just interesting background. So, but. Well, like I said, again, I've said it a couple times, but thanks for being on. I think this was a really entertaining show, really cool for me to get to talk to you and hear your perspective on things. And hope to have you back soon, man.
Oh, I'd love to anytime. It was really fun. It was great to see Tony again, even through video, because last time I saw him was at that seminar when I drove out from here to come and
Oh,
see.
yeah.
It was one of the
That's cool.
first seminars, the latest series that he did.
Mhm.
And we got to see each other there too. I was surprised to see Jason Bender there too. But hopefully we can maybe organize some more seminars like that and maybe bring them out here and you guys can all come visit me.
Well, you know, I had any excuse to get to Colorado. Like I said, my one trip out there, I was definitely impressed. It's a beautiful place. So, yeah, I think, yeah, I can understand why you're staying there.
It
Besides
is.
the family, of course.
Yeah, it's a blessed country here. Yeah, I love it.
All right, dude, I'm gonna sign off, and have a good one.
You too, Joe. Thank you.